Welcome to the very first episode of the 2023 Monster Energy Supercross Preview Shows on Vital MX, presented by Yoshimura. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, joined by Michael Lindsay, and over the coming days, we'll be discussing everything that we expect to see when the new season begins in Anaheim, California on Saturday, January the 7th. It's not far away now, and the new season promises to be one of the best. Both classes are stacked, particularly the 450 class, where four main contenders sit at the top of the tree, those being Eli Tomac, Jason Anderson, Chase Sexton, and Cooper Webb. Those are the riders who we are going to focus on in this episode, and I don't think anyone can deny that they are the clear-cut contenders / favourites for the 450 title. Obviously, there are other riders who can win main events, be on the podium, blah, 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 but these are the riders who definitely will be in the mix for the championship. The title's going to come from one of these four. Tomac obviously enters as a defending champion and is coming off a ridiculously successful 2022. Not much has changed on that front. He's still with Star Racing Yamaha, a team he really gelled with in year one. But there's one crucial difference. The 2022 bike has gone away. It's gone forever. The all-new 2023 YZ450F is something he's going to have to adapt to. Now, obviously, at the moment, everyone loves it. The reviews are great, the riders are happy, so they should be. They're riding prepped test tracks, which they know what they need to do on. When you get to a race situation, it's completely different, and that's where gremlins arise. So could that potentially hold Tomac back, cause him problems, put his back up against the wall, and harm this title defense? What says you, Michael Lindsay?
Well, I think after what we witnessed with Cooper Webb last year and the entire Austrian group, mostly Husky and KTM on the new platform, instantly brings people to mind of, man, can they get it done on a new platform? Because we saw it not go so well in 2022. However, if you look back, 2018, Jason Anderson won the title on a new platform. 2015, Ryan Dungey did the same. And 2012 with Ryan Villopoto. So it is not out of the question, but it's the only question we can put against Eli Tomac winning this title. And in two different ways, it could be setup issue. He could struggle, and really the first couple rounds of last year, his consistency is what really I think is the backbone of his championship. So if he loses that early in the season, it really could affect him. And on top of that, it really brings in the question if there's a possibility of a mechanical. The engine is heavily overhauled in this bike. There is almost no component shared. Tomac is known to be very aggressive on throttle input, on clutch, puts a lot of heat in the engine, puts it through a lot. And again, riding perfect test tracks, doing their thing, being smoother, working on technique. Maybe he's not as hard at. Put him in race situation, gets a little aggro, a little aggressive. It's not unheard of that it could have a problem.
Yeah, I'm concerned about his consistency because that is definitely his greatest strength as he's gotten older and as he continues to get older. I think everyone thinks his strength is raw speed. Obviously, we've seen a lot of that through his career. He sits tied fourth on the all-time win list for a reason. And he did go on a good stretch in the middle of just last year where he won, I think, 5 main events in a row. So that speed is still there. But also Sexton, Anderson, and Webb have speed. Tomac's strength over those riders is consistency. He rarely makes major mistakes nowadays. His bad weekends are a 4th or a 5th. And that's where he did, like you say, that's where he did the most damage last year. He took the red plate after round 3 without having won a race. Why? Because he was there, other riders were tipping over, Sexton, getting involved in stupid altercations, Anderson. Tomac picked up those pieces, ran with it, and by the time he eventually made a mistake, he had enough of a buffer where it didn't really matter. Now, enter bike setup issues, maybe those bad weekends turn from a 4th to a 9th. That makes quite the difference when it comes to points. That hurts his buffer. That opens the door for the other riders. But I think the real point to hammer home here is consistency has been Tomac's greatest strength. He's sat on a streak of, I think, 32 consecutive top 10 finishes at the moment, which is insanity, really, and especially when you think about where Tomac's come from. In comparison to the other riders in this episode, I think Anderson's on a streak of 7, and then Sexton and Webb are on 6 apiece. So the difference there is massive. If Tomac were to lose that does kind of take away his greatest strength, and then he is no different to the others. And then what's stopping the younger and potentially faster riders from overtaking him? I just think that by no means is Tomac going to walk to this title defense. And there's a reason we haven't seen a rider defend a title since Ryan Dungey, which seems like a lifetime ago now.
It does. It is shocking that where everybody we're talking about here is kind of incapable of defending titles. Webb, Anderson, Tomac. Chase, of course, hasn't gone there yet, but nobody here is proven-wise. And look, statistics are statistics. Like, this is a proof of the pudding. It really makes you doubt that Eli can pull this off. And I think, again, we'll get into it, but it also comes the other riders here and where I think me and you are kind of putting our faith.
I think one thing that really, again, reiterates a consistency point, Anderson was closer to Tomac than most people realised last year. I think we all know Anderson was good, but I think we all, in our heads, think that Tomac walked to the title, which he did, in a sense. He won it around early, but only after Anderson scored 1 point in Detroit. Obviously, then Tomac then missed the last round, which effectively meant it was a wash. Both riders had, in one way or another, missed a round. And then Anderson was only 9 points down on Tomac at the end. And they both had 7 wins apiece, so that's another one. They were really quite similar. So if you then take away some of Tomac's positives, that makes Anderson better than Tomac, which potentially is what we're now going to see in 2023.
Really, Jason last year was his own worst enemy, in my opinion, when you look back at how his championship went. If you take out the rounds that he didn't get in altercations, kind of his own design, yes, the loss of points at Detroit, and then I believe, was it San Diego? He also had the mechanical issue that dropped quite a bit of points where he was having to roll around smoking bike. You take those out of the equation, it's very if and but he's right there for the title, and for him, those bad decisions, he can very easily right those himself, because we looked at how strong he was at the end of the season, the amount of wins he cranked out at the end, back to back to back. It's truly amazing to look back at the season, and while we had a couple different winners, the fact that Jason and Eli really dominated the season when it comes to total win count, it puts Jason in a position where he can very easily contend for this title again if he just fixes his own errors.
It's funny, I said there that people don't realise how close Anderson was to Tomac last year. And I think that I'm even in that category, because Anderson was amazing last year. It was the best year of his career by far. It was so much better than his title-winning season that, there's no comparison there. But for some reason, I'm still not there with Anderson. I think because the years between 2018 and 2022 were so bad that they're kind of etched into my memory, where now I can't see past those. So whilst we've kind of laid out the argument, Anderson really is maybe the favourite for this thing, but I can't go there because I'm so locked onto those bad years that he hasn't done enough to erase those from my mind yet. So I need to see him back up the good year. Yeah. Because really, he hasn't strung together consistent good years in his career. So I need to see something before I can jump into this Anderson title conversation and all of that sort of stuff.
I think the way I'm there is I almost have a Jason Anderson 1.0 and a 2.0 with, you look at the way he carries himself. Interviewing him last year, he was a joy to be around. He really seems like a different person. It's really shocking. So again, I'm at this weird point where I'm looking at Jason Anderson 2.0. I'm kind of able to somewhat ignore what you're talking about him not being able to follow it up in those couple past just dreadful seasons. Let's be honest, they were nothing to write home about. And with that, again, when we're going to get into with the other guys, but for what they each have to do to get the championship, I feel like with Jason's being so much within his own control, he is my title favorite.
Well, let me follow that up with this then. You say that you've got Anderson 1.0 in your mind and Anderson 2.0. 2022, we had Sexton 1.0, very fast. The pieces of the puzzle were there. They just weren't quite put together in the right way, and that resulted in mistakes, crashes, a lot of points left on the table. Although, a lot of people think that his 2022 Supercross season was just a mess. He was in the top 5 in 12 of the 16 main events he raced. That tells me that he is consistent to a degree. It wasn't just a complete wash. I think that now we're going to see Sexton 2.0. Those mistakes are going to be eliminated for the most part. And once those mistakes are eliminated, what is the issue with Chase Sexton? There isn't one. He had the best average starting position of everyone last year. So starts are great. The speed is there. No one's going to dispute that. The speed is amazing. Take away the mistakes. I see Sexton winning the most main events. I see him winning the championship. I see Sexton being the guy that everyone else has to worry about. And truthfully, I think that if you hooked a lie detector test up to the other riders, I think they would say that they are all concerned about Sexton too. I think Tomac knows what Anderson's going to bring to the party. I think Tomac knows what Webb's going to. We'll get to Webb, but I think Webb's playbook is known at this point. Sexton can take it to another level, and I think that would concern everyone. Sexton is similar to James in a way. He can take it to a level where no one else is willing to go, and he can do that consistently, because when he shows that speed, it's not 1 week and then for the next 5 weeks he's riding around in fifth. That speed is shown on a week by week basis, so it's only a matter of time before he figures the rest out. So Sexton, basically.
I think you nailed it comparing him to James, because I think the things that Chase can do on a bike, it makes even a Jason Anderson, Eli Tomac look at sometimes like, wow, he really can. Of all these guys, again, it's hard to look at a Jason Anderson, Eli Tomac this late in their career and go, man, can they find another level? I feel like Jason kind of already did last year. It's like, can he do that 2 years in a row?
Well, and crucially, Tomac is on his way out, so does he even want to?
Exactly. Where I think we're all very confident in Chase has something there. He has something that he can push, I think, farther than where these guys might be able to go right now. If he can harness that, again, what you said, I feel like it's the lie detector test when only they're worried, they could be scared at what he can do on the motorcycle.
I just feel convinced. Like, I feel as though it's rare for a rider to make the mistakes that Sexton does and then not learn from it. Most of the time when someone makes those mistakes, it's kind of a precursor of a dominant period or at least a championship winning season. So I think we're now heading into the sequel, which is a very successful season for Sexton, a lot of alliteration there, and a season where others effectively can't match him. I think Sexton's going to rise above everyone this year, mainly because of his raw speed. And I think one rider who we can say confidently wouldn't be able to match Sexton's raw speed is Webb, because even in his title-winning seasons, raw speed has never been his thing, which is fine because his thing is something that you can't teach and actually maybe no one else has. And it's just that he's crafty.
He has racecraft. I'm convinced when other people are in the race, they're just riding. I'm convinced that it's the whole checkers versus chess argument. Everybody else is playing checkers. He's playing chess. He's planning out what's happening on what laps. Because you see him in races where when there isn't a lot to win, if it's kind of locked down, like, okay, Eli's, say, leading, Chase is second, he's third, there's nothing to separate him, he'll settle for a third knowing that, okay, I'm going to bring my battle another day, where if they hit a race where those guys all have an issue off the start or something, even if he comes out the gate 6th or 7th, he'll mentally figure that out. He'll track those guys where they are, and he'll do everything possible to rise to the occasion to get to first because he knows he can make points that night. That's what I feel like Cooper Webb brings to the table, is a guy that will capitalize when the moment is right, and a rider that is so mentally strong that he can rise to the occasion. And we could talk a bit about his bike issues from last year. I think they will have a better overall base this year. I'm not going to say the bike, they've figured out how to make it suit him, but I don't think that's always an issue for Cooper. He can, again, not be great in qualifying, be okay in heat race, but when the situation is right and he needs to make it happen, he's in a very elite group amongst an elite group that can make it happen and push himself and will himself to make it happen.
This isn't a theory that I subscribe to, but I feel like there are going to be people who say it. Do you honestly believe that Webb still belongs in this conversation with Tomac, Sexton, and Anderson?
I think so, because it's just hard to doubt anybody that's a two-time champion and somebody of his caliber that has been these guys, that has been Ken Rocks, that has been Eli Tomac, that Cooper's been the best. Yeah, it's not always in the most convincing fashion, like you said. It's not always with outright raw speed, but any of these other guys can falter and he can capitalize, and he's proven he can do it.
Essentially, the door opens for Webb if Tomac struggles with bike setup issues, Anderson makes the same, it sounds harsh, idiotic mistakes that he did last year, and Sexton can't completely eliminate his minor errors. That's when the door opens for someone like Webb. If Tomac has no bike setup issues, Anderson is clean and has no run-ins with any other riders, and Sexton completely eliminates his mistakes, then I struggle to make an argument for Webb being able to beat those riders, but he's certainly still a factor. And I say beat over the course of a season for a championship.
I think what's interesting is, however, your good friend that you interviewed thinks otherwise.
Yes, that was actually interesting. On Vital MX, we ran an interview with Hurlings not too long ago, exclusive, by the way, and he said that he'd been texting Webb a lot recently and through the summer, and Webb is his pick for the title purely because he seems really pissed off and like he has a point to prove. And everything we've just spoken about with Webb can effectively be thrown out because really, bike setup, who cares? Racecraft, who cares? Webb's main strength is when he's pissed off, he's good. So Webb is now pissed off, and that in itself is something for the other riders to fear, I think.
And has he ever been this pissed off? Because it's one thing for him to have to prove to the fans and the doubters that he can do it, to prove to the people he's racing. But what else was really interesting, again, in an interview that I did with him at the team intro, I think a lot of us saw him signing a 1-year extension with KTM as something of his choice. You know, there's the speculation of him possibly going to Star in 2024 to replace Eli Tomac, him maybe wanting to reunite with Bobby Reagan in that group. So I think a lot of us said, oh, that maybe that's on him. Not the case. He said that the 1-year deal was not his decision. It seems to have been KTM's decision. So maybe add his employer to one of the people that has pissed him off potentially.
Look, I think I can say with certainty that Webb not winning a race last year was an anomaly. Strange word to say, anomaly. And this year he will win multiple races, I think. Maybe not as many as the other three, but he will win 2, 3, 4 races and he will be in the mix. I do definitely think he still belongs in this elite group, and he doesn't belong in the group of the Roxons, the Barshas, the Marvins, the riders who are previous winners and maybe moving away from that time in their career. But those are the riders we'll get to in the second episode tomorrow, January the 2nd. That'll be released at 12 p.m. PST. So stay tuned to the Vital MX YouTube channel for that and so much more as Anaheim 1 edges closer. Thanks for watching episode 1, and we will see you tomorrow.